let's jump straight into it with Friday night regular and former Queensland Premier Campbell Newman. Campbell, great to see you. It's been a couple of weeks to forget for Optus and its owner Singtel after an outage shut down the emergency services network across South Australia and the Northern Territory. Now, the outage has been linked to the deaths of 3 people, including a baby boy. Campbell, the Communications Minister, has now summoned the Chief Executive of Singtel to a committee hearing on Monday to explain its role in this saga. The last time that happened, the former Optus chief was dragged over the coals and promptly resigned. Do you think we'll see that happen again?
Well, Caroline, who knows exactly? I guess the forces are lining up to pressure the CEO to resign. But I'd make this point that not only should Optus be held to account, and it's all very well for them to be hauled down to Canberra, but what about ACMA? I mean, this has happened before with Optus, and there were recommendations about how to stop this happening again, but a regulator that was on top of their game would have been down there looking in detail internally in Optus, doing an audit, making sure the things that they said they were going to do have been done. And I asked the question this evening, has ACMA done their job? It's all very well for a bit of sort of high theatre, media, performative art by the minister, but the minister should be asking ACMA the hard questions as well. So, yes, let's get to the bottom with Optus. Let's make sure that they lift their game, but we need the regulator to be on top of things in the future.
So other than more scrutiny for the regulator, what other action do you think the federal government needs to take to ensure more lives are not put at risk if and probably when this happens again?
Well, you know, I'm not sure entirely of the powers of ACMA when it comes to this, but surely at the end of the day, there's the ultimate sanction about whether they can continue with the current management team and have a licence. So I guess that, you know, between the federal government themselves, the executive, and ACMA, that they can force change within Optus, and they should also be putting pressure on Singtel to answer some tough questions as well, because there have been stories in the media, Caroline, that measures that Singtel have imposed on Optus may have compromised the technical capability within Optus.
Well, I mean, it is the second such outage for Optus, of course, in 2 years. I mean, in a 2-year period. I mean, do you think this needs to be the beginning of the end for the telco? If you know, things were imposed on them previously, this has happened despite that. Should they be allowed to continue to operate?
Well, I think it's a very big issue to try and take away their licence and shut them down, and that I think is far too complicated to unravel. But impose conditions that sees a proper change at the top, whether it be the board, and there's a question mark about how much power they really have, given Singtel own them 100%. But also then imposing change in terms of the management team. As I said, let's not let ACMA get away from this without query. The regulator needs to be sort of demonstrating to the minister and to the government that they actually have taken steps to really look at what's going on and do a deep dive within the organisation. I mean, ASIC, for example, when they're doing their job properly, will do a deep dive inside financial services organisations to make sure that they are actually complying with the law. And that's what should happen here.
OK, let's move on to something else. Susan Lee has warned Anthony Albanese's failure to build a strong relationship with Donald Trump has left Australia exposed to the US president's shock 100% tariff on pharmaceuticals, putting local jobs and critical trade at risk. I made a similar argument at the top of the show, Campbell. Is she right that the Prime Minister should have built that connection by now? Because do you think it would have actually made a difference in relation to this announcement?
Well, I think she is right on this one, and I think that building a relationship earlier in this Trump administration could have made a difference. I mean, the Labor Party have been running around high-fiving the last 2 or 3 days. Oh, the PM has got a meeting, how wonderful. And a lot of people in the media have dutifully gone, oh, wow, this is sensational. Well, you know, the relationship needed to be established months ago, and the case that Australia has a unique position as one of America's most reliable allies should have been put on the table. We know that the Trump administration and the president were concerned for a long time about our wonderful pharmaceutical benefit scheme, and that needed to be dealt with. But what's happened over this year? Well, the Albanese administration here has done everything they can to antagonise the US. I mean, really, you know, the recognition of Palestine, you know, when there isn't anybody who can take over, you know, it goes on and on and on. You know, there's been so many pokes in the eye. I think he's lucky he's got a meeting. By the way, when he does turn up for the meeting, if he doesn't get sort of hauled over the coals publicly by Dad, you know, I think we're all going to be a bit surprised.
I know. Well, we've seen what's happened to other world leaders in the Oval Office. So, look, they may not be posing for a happy snap selfie by the end of it, Campbell. But look, things aren't so rosy either in the Liberal Party federally. Shadow Home Affairs Minister Andrew Hastie hasn't been far from the headlines this week with comments about Australia's high levels of migration. And now a lot of Liberal insiders are saying they didn't expect Hastie to agitate this early into the new term. There seems to be a lot of leaking against him, and he's come out with some strong words against those leaders. But he still has a lot of support, especially from plenty of Liberals who don't want to show their cards yet. He says Susan Lee has his support. I'm not sure if we necessarily believe him about that. What have you made of his interventions?
Well, someone needed to step up and actually send a message to Australians that there is an alternative, that there's someone who is lining up to defend them. Let me put it like this. When I lost to Anastasia Palaszczuk in 2015, everyone was surprised. You know, we were a first-term government. We had a huge majority. But the difference between the ALP in 2012 to 2015 in Queensland and the Liberal Party today is that Anastasia Palaszczuk, I'm giving credit here, and the very small ALP caucus got on and took the fight to my government and me personally, very personally. But they never laid down. They never sort of said, oh, we're going to spend sort of a year thinking about policy. They got on and took a fight up to my government, and, you know, against all expectations, they won. That's what Hastie is doing here, because I'm afraid the Leader of the Opposition hasn't, and nor have other senior members of the team, apart from, of course, Jacinta Price. So it had to be done, you know, and, you know, Susan Lee has taken them back in the polls, and I think her leadership is right on a knife edge now, and there will need to be change. And, you know, for these people who just want to sit around and wait and sort of have this sort of ridiculous view that, oh, well, we can't win, you know, in 2.5 years' time, that is pathetic. Again, Palaszczuk didn't do that. The Liberal Party shouldn't be doing that. Australia deserves better. There are so many issues they could be taking the government on, and they really should get to work right now, not engage in a lot of navel-gazing.
Yeah, they cannot afford to coast along. There are just too many seats that they need to try and fight to win back. Campbell Newman, always great to chat. Thank you.